everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I'm Amanda Landis-Hanna, one of the co-hosts of the Veterinary Business Podcasts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing, finance, leadership, HR, law, and much more. Whether you're a practicing veterinarian or veterinary technician, a practice owner, a practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian or veterinary technician, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, YouTube Music, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms. Today, I'm excited to talk to Dr. Cindy Trice, Chief Veterinary Officer at Hound. She's also the founder of Relief Rover and the co-founder and Chief Innovation Officer at Kick It Pajamas. Our topic today is the state of veterinary relief. Today, in addition, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Trice about her previous entrepreneurial experience, as well as her experience with Relief Rover and Kick It Pajamas. Thank you so much, Dr. Trice, for being with us today.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we'll kick right off, okay? Today, we're going to get started talking about your career. Tell me a little bit about your pre-Relief Rover experience. What challenges did you face as a relief veterinarian? And how did that experience inspire the creation of Relief Rover?
Well, I always feel like I had a few evolutions as a relief vet. And I would say I never truly expected to become a relief vet. It's not like you're in vet school and you're like, internal medicine, oncology, radiology, or relief, right? It's like, it isn't right. The choices that we think about. But I had a career before I was a relief vet, before I was a vet, and I did freelance production. So I had started to enjoy and this cadence of working where I would work really hard. I'd be on a team. We'd get to know each other really well for whatever the production was, whether it was a few days on a commercial or whether it was a mini series or whether it was a movie or a documentary. So I got to be with all these different teams for varying periods of time. We'd work really hard, we'd get to know each other really well, and then poof, the job was over. And then you'd have this like reset time, where you could just do whatever you want. You might be looking for your next gig, and sometimes your next gig would come right away, and sometimes your next gig would take a little bit of time, or you could choose, right? Kind of manage your budget, figure out how much you want to work. So that way of living appealed to me. And so I really think that those were the roots of me becoming a relief vet and loving relief. Even though I didn't, it's only in, looking backwards that I'm making those connections. So I'm a 2004 grad, and I had every intention of going into specialty practice. I did an internship. I was going to do residency. I wasn't quite sure what specialty I wanted to do, but I was thinking internal medicine or maybe critical care. And the internship was supposed to help me figure that out. But I ended up having to drop out of the internship early due to illness. And then I worked at a general practice for about a year and a half, and it super bugged me that I didn't finish the internship. So I went back, started the internship over. And then when I graduated from that, I had a choice to make. I could either go back to that job or I could look around. And I really loved my job. I had a great first job. I was one of the lucky veterinarians who did have good mentorship and a supportive team and all of those things at my first job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I'm also like super curious and I really wanted to know what else was out there. And I didn't want to get stuck in one way of doing things. So
Hmm.
I originally started doing relief because I just was a little bit nosy and I wanted to see like what other practices were doing. And then my husband, who's a freelance photographer, ended up getting a job in Missoula, Montana. We live in
Hmm.
Florida, and he gets a job in Missoula, Montana that's going to be seasonal. So it's basically from May through October, which is the best time to leave swampy Florida
Right.
and the best time to live in gorgeous Montana. And so we ended up moving there for 6 months at a time. And we did this for 3 years in a row. And relief powered a lot of that. So he had
Right.
this job at a photography school, and then I was a relief vet. And that was my sort of, I would say, second evolution with
Hmm.
relief, because that was when I suddenly started to realize, hey, wait a second, I'm a business to business service provider, and the clinic is my client. And I
Hmm.
didn't really have that perspective, even though that was true before. I just didn't totally have that perspective. I felt a little more like, I was a substitute teacher. I was just there to kind of take care of whatever and then leave. And
Hmm.
but when I started to level up in my own mind and my own way of thinking about it, and I thought of myself this way, and I thought of the clinic as a whole as my client, rather
Hmm.
than just that I was there to take care of the patients and leave, it really started making it more fun. I I started to get, really curious about how else can I help support this business, and really taking the role of not only taking care of the patients, but taking the role of, I want the team to have a great day while I'm here, and I want the clients to have a great experience. I want them to leave feeling like they had a very good experience with this clinic, and I wanted them that goodwill to be attached to that clinic, and I
Hmm.
understood my role in that. So that was kind of, the evolution that led me to really think about relief in a different way and understand that it could be a true career choice. And then when I looked around, several years later, I looked around and I was like, nobody is supporting relief professionals. There were a few scattered staffing agencies. There was a woman named Dr. Karen Smith who had written a book called Flex Vet: How to Be One, How to Hire One. So she was kind of the one that was giving um, information and resources for people who wanted to be relief vets. But I don't know how many people actually knew about that book. And then she ended up, retiring, and, didn't keep the book updated and all that stuff. So then that left this void where there was no one speaking for relief vets. And
Hmm.
so I self-anointed myself that person. And it wasn't so much because I felt like I knew everything. But at this point, I had been a relief vet for well over a decade. And so I had figured some things out along the way. And I also knew that there were other ways to level up. And so really, I created Relief Rover because I wanted to create a resource for veterinarians who were thinking of this as a career choice, or wanted to think of this as a career choice, because I didn't see that that was out there.
Well, I am certainly glad that you self-anointed because obviously, as a relief veterinarian myself, I may have used Relief Rover about 100 times. So thank you for self-anointing. But obviously, the landscape of relief veterinary work has changed even since Relief Rover's launch, in addition to your decade of doing relief. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so right when I was starting to really think about this 2016, 2017 time frame, um, I was noticing that relief was starting to get a little bit more popular. Or
Mhm.
maybe I was just paying more attention. I'm not sure, sometimes it's hard to know the difference, but we now have data. So we do know that we aren't all going crazy. I know that a lot of like practices may be thinking, everyone wants to be a relief vet. Why does everyone want to be a relief vet? It can get very frustrating. But they're not wrong. It's not everyone. by no means is it everyone, but it is more people. And we know this because AVMA, they just put out their 2024 report on the economic state of the veterinary profession, and they've been tracking relief for quite a while. But I think they've actually started to track it a little more thoroughly. So they reported that at the end of 2022, there were about 124,000 practicing vets in the US. And that in 2023, about 6% of vets were working as relief vets. That's what they reported on this survey.
Right.
So that estimates about 7,400, 7,500 relief vets. So if we look at the backwards at the data from before, there was 2018 AVMA data that reported that relief vets grew from approximately 1,800 in 2008 to about 2,300 in 2018. So that grew in a decade. However, as a percentage of working vets, that remained at 2%. So that really didn't represent true growth of the popularity of relief. However, 2% of working vets to 6% of working vets in 5 years, that represents growth. And that is why, all of us in the profession are like getting this vibe, like, why does everyone want to be a relief vet?
Right.
Because it is happening. There are more veterinarians choosing this as a lifestyle, either as a career choice as a whole or temporarily, right? It can serve multiple purposes.
Absolutely. For me personally, as the chief veterinary officer at One Health Group, I stay very busy, but I still love to sort of keep my hands in, as it were. And, working with Relief Rover has been so beneficial because it really allows me that opportunity to sort of supplement what I'm doing as well as keep working in veterinary clinics. I know with working with Relief Rover, it's not just job placement or like a job board, but there's also a number of different aspects of resources and such a great community. Why do you believe these additional aspects are crucial for relief vets and technicians?
Well, when I started Relief Rover, my intention was not specifically to be a job board, right? I knew I wanted to offer that as a resource. And actually, this is an interesting story. So before I actually launched Relief Rover, but the idea was a little bit circulating around in my head, I got this notification from LinkedIn of a solo practitioner in Truckee, California, who reached out to me. I'm sitting here at my breakfast table in Florida. She reaches out and she's like, "Hey, would you cover my maternity leave?" I don't know her. She doesn't know me. I am across the country from her. And, I am lucky to have the lifestyle. I have no little people. And I have a freelance husband and a bunch of dogs. And so I just shout out to Jimmy, my husband, I'm like, "Hey, you want to go to Tahoe for the summer?" Because Truckee is near Lake Tahoe, which is
Mhm.
gorgeous. And he's like, "Sure, let's go." So I literally have a half-hour conversation with this woman. And, a few months later, I'm throwing the dogs in the car and we're traveling across the country. This worked out splendidly for both of us. I had basically had my own practice. I worked Monday through Friday. I hiked on the weekends, and I just had an amazing time. But I literally thought to myself, this is a needle in a haystack. And I thought to myself, I can't possibly be the only one who is willing to travel. People have all sorts of reasons for wanting to be in different parts of the country. Maybe if you do have kids, you go for the summer with your kids to live near mom and dad so they can be near their
Mhm.
grandparents, and Relief supports that, just as an example. So
Sure.
when I started the job board, I wanted it to be national. I wanted people to connect to opportunities anywhere. And so I built it up as a job, partly to be a job board, but also I knew that really what I wanted to help vets do was start a career and build a career as a relief vet. And and so therefore they needed business resources. They needed to
Mhm.
know, how do I become a relief vet? What are the pros and cons? What are the, business entities that might make sense for me? What are the tax implications? What are some of the leadership things? What about DEA? What about, getting licensed in all these different states? And, there's a lot of information to take in. And so I wanted to offer this information in the form of blogs, in the form of tools, software tools, in the form of webinars and continuing education. And so Relief Rover was and is meant to be so much more than just a place to go find work.
I'm so grateful, as I will continue to repeat throughout this entire podcast. But of course, here recently, you've had some exciting things happening. Relief Rover was acquired. Are you excited about it? Are you excited about the future? How are things going with Hound?
Yeah, so this was really exciting. So I launched Relief Rover in July of 2018, bootstrapped, solo founded, just me at my breakfast table, funding this whole thing via, working extra relief shifts, quite frankly. And eventually, and it was free for everyone at first, because I knew with a two-sided marketplace and kind of building all this, it was going to take a lot of time for people to come on board.
Right.
But, it didn't take us long to get to our first 100 and then our 500 and then 1,000. And so people were really into this resource. So eventually, I thankfully had this amazing business advisor who kept saying to me, Cindy, when you want to turn this into a proper business, let me know and I'll help you, because I was just giving it all away for free.
Right.
And so he did help me monetize it. And we monetized it by charging a subscription fee to employers. It remains free for relief veterinarians, and we now have technicians as well. So it will remain free for them. And so we charge the employer side for access to the site to, search for relief professionals. We also do give a lot of support for employers as well. So I'm chugging along. I'm building, I'm getting enough revenue to start building a team. I worked with all freelancers. I never had an employee. So I built to a team of there were about 6 of us, not all working full time on this. So it was me and 5 freelancers. And we were growing and getting really big. And I was starting to get a bit overwhelmed. And I thought to myself, okay, we're at a pivot point. We've proved the concept. We've proved that people are interested in this type of resource. And to get to the next level, I either needed to get investment, find a partner, sell it, one of those 3 things. And so I was actually going down the path of finding investment. And I was starting to get, pitch decks together and figuring out who we would approach for investment. So we were going down that road, and Hound approached me. And I had known about Hound. They came onto the scene before or after me, a couple years after Relief Rover was founded. And Andrew, their founder, had introduced himself to me right when they came in the game. And I've always liked Andrew. I've always been impressed by what Hound was doing. But honestly, it never occurred to me that would be, an option. I honestly didn't think about it. And he approached me and I said, yeah, you know what? The timing might be perfect. And I really did my due diligence to figure out if, Hound was the right home for Relief Rover.
Right.
And I surveyed the landscape. I talked to people in all kind of cohorts of our profession, seasoned people, mid-career people to new people. And there was a lot of love for Hound in all of those cohorts. And so I did it, after several months of hemming and hawing and thinking about it and doing my due diligence, I decided to do it. And I will tell you, I have not had 1 nanosecond of regret. And frankly, in some ways, I maybe a little bit expected to, because that is a big decision. It is a big decision to turn something that you have poured your heart and soul into for 5 years. It was almost 5 years to the day from when I launched to when I sold. And I expected, you might have moments where you're like second guess, but
Mm-hmm.
never, not once. Our values, Hound's values and Relief Rover's values line up completely. And Hound is allowing me and Relief Rover to grow and we're working to kind of get Relief Rover to the next level and really to the vision that I always had from the very beginning, but was unable to do completely by myself
Yeah.
as a bootstrap solo founded company.
That's amazing. It sounds like a really great relationship, almost a happy marriage, as it were.
Absolutely. It's 100% a happy marriage. And I think I like to think I think Andrew would agree with this that that myself and Relief Rover have brought a lot to Hound. We had two of my team members come along with, and they're loving it as well. And I can definitely say that Hound has brought a lot to Relief Rover.
That's amazing. Now you're the chief veterinary officer, but obviously you've also been a practicing veterinarian and a company founder. Are there unique challenges and rewards for each role, or does it feel like everything is status quo all the time?
Oh my gosh, no. Heck no. It's so different. And I never in a gazillion years, like I said, when I graduated from vet school, I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna be a relief vet. You
Right.
just don't know where your career path is gonna take you. And honestly, to me, that's fun. I am not the kind of person that has a long-term goal. I take the steps to get there, and then I get there and then I make a new goal. I'm a
Sure.
little fly by the seat of my pants kind of gal. Obviously it takes some planning, and you know, discipline to get into vet school, to get through vet school, to start a company, to build a company. So it's not like I'm, absent of discipline,
Hmm.
but I think a character trait of mine that I think I both a little bit had and also have developed is that I'm willing to uh, take my blinders off and keep a wide peripheral view and
Yeah.
look for opportunities and meet different people. And when I was a practicing veterinarian, like solely, and I didn't have any other, career projects in my life, I, for the most part, was a happy practicing veterinarian. I did go through a period of burnout, so I do understand what that feels like. And I did have that moment where I was like, I'm done with this. I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go find some other, you know, world to devote my time and energy to. And I took a little break. And Relief helped me do that. Um, but once I kind of got back on track with vet men and I started the business and I started meeting all of these amazing people, you
Hmm.
know, really initially through vet partners, which is how we met.
Yeah.
Uh, it cracked open this whole other world for me, this entrepreneurial world. And I thought to myself, I have found my people. I have found the people who uh, understand the challenges that we have in vet med, but rather than just complaining about them, are actually trying to solve them and
Yeah.
trying to do their part to make a difference. And that was when I was like, okay, here we are. These are my people. And I practiced, I still practice. So I still do clinical practice. I would miss it if I didn't do it at all.
Right.
So I still have that clinical practice part of me. It is for sure much less than it used to be, but I've definitely not given it up. I do ER shifts on some weekends. And then moving from a role from being a company founder to being a chief veterinary officer, I will say, you know, I love being part of a bigger team. And
Hmm.
it is true, that there is some of that weight of being a solo founder. I mean, it's heavy. It's heavy and it's hard a lot of the time. And it's
Right.
lonely,
Hmm.
frankly. Um, and so having that weight off my shoulders while still getting to see this thing that it means so much to me, move on and get to be a part of that growth has been truly game changing for me. And I'm getting to stretch myself because my role with Hound as Chief Veterinary Officer is beyond just working on Relief Rover. We have two other products. We've got Scout, which is our platform for full and part-time recruiting for anybody on the veterinary team. And then we've got Rally, which is our culture and retention tool. And so getting to kind of dive into a little bit more about the dynamics behind culture and retention and really broaden my scope so that I can look at the entire workforce of vet med and their experience, no matter where they are in their journey, whether they're looking for a job, whether they're wanting to do relief, or whether they're in their job. That has been and continues to be a really rewarding growth in my career.
That's amazing. And of course, I also met you at Vet Partners, like you mentioned, and it's been so amazing to follow your career. And now you've got something completely different happening with Kick It Pajamas. Can you tell me a little bit about what motivated you to create a company that's focused on women's cancer care?
Yeah, so it seems completely random and out of the blue, right? But
Right.
in my mind, it's not entirely disentangled from my veterinary life. And the reason
Mhm.
is I was diagnosed with advanced cervical cancer literally, I think, 3 months into my internship,
Wow.
right when I graduated vet school. And so it was a very scary time. My survival stats weren't delightful at all. And so I went through a lot during that. That was why I dropped out of the internship. But I was hospitalized a lot. And when I was in the hospital, a friend of mine gave me a pair of pajamas. And it was truly game changing for how I felt.
Yeah.
I was 35 years old when this happened to me. And I wasn't married. I had a boyfriend who is now my husband. And he would come to the hospital and visit me. And I just felt more, I mean, I was in pajamas, but I felt more dressed than I felt in that hospital gown.
Sure.
And it just felt better. And it was crazy to me, the psychology of that and the difference that it made. But the problem was it didn't have the functionality that the medical staff needed. They were
Okay.
so sweet. They let me wear it anyway. It could be kind of a pain because, I'm hooked up to an IV line and didn't have snaps on the sleeve to be able to get it off without getting it off over the whole line. Like you had to be unhooked to change.
Gotcha.
And so I thought to myself, well, like, duh, why don't they make cute PJs that have snaps on the sleeve? And so I know nothing about fashion at all. And in fact, my friends would say I'm the least fashionable of all of them. Um, but I didn't let that stop me. I ended up working with a fashion school in Tampa, spun up some prototypes. And again, I'm like, I do have grit. So I was on this like bootstrap solo founded mission to get Kick It Pajamas going. And this is a few years after I've recovered, this didn't all happen while I was sick. Um, but I spent some years on it. I'm working as a veterinarian and I'm trying to do this thing and I just threw it in the closet. I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I cannot seem to get this thing going. And so a friend of mine who I've known since the fourth grade and is a business person, she ended up serendipitously meeting these two women who own a children's clothing company. And so long story short, the four of us came together and relaunched Kick It Pajamas. So we've been really effectively since 2021.
That's so cool. Um, I can see how it, from first glance, it does look so different, but you're really focused on care, whether it's care of animals, care of people, care of the veterinarians, care for women with cancer. You are obviously a very caring person.
Well, and it's, I mean, and I do think, from my entrepreneurial journey, again, I never planned on being an entrepreneur. It wasn't like, and I think that there's kind of two ways people become entrepreneurs. They're either like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Let me figure out what is a problem that I can solve that can turn into a business.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes for them, maybe the sector that's in doesn't necessarily matter. They're willing to kind of learn about whatever. But for me, both entrepreneurial pursuits where I was solving a problem that I had, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't see an easy solution for. And so I took that as an opportunity. But with Kick It, we're really about helping women feel better,
Mm-hmm.
um, and
Right.
have choices, but we're also a company that gives back. So a big thing we want to do with Kick It is we're a for-profit company, but we're a company that gives back. And our goal is to, help support. Right now, we support cancer patient support and research organizations. So we give back a portion of sales to those organizations. We're starting to hone in on access to care for women, because as I get back into this cancer world, and work on this. I'm a patient advocate for an organization called Survivor. I'm learning a lot about access to care and how there are many women, even in our own country, that don't have access to care and don't get, diagnosed. They don't have the preventive care, then they don't get diagnosed. They get diagnosed too late, and they lose their lives over a disease that is completely preventable. And so, Kick It, we're starting to kind of hone in on being a company that gives back in that way and helps women have access to care. And again, we want to be a for-profit business, but with a social mission.
As a cancer survivor, I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. And it sounds like this entrepreneurial spirit really kind of pervades your entire life. Do you have any advice for veterinarians who are interested in starting their own businesses? Are there ways that veterinarians can find opportunities or spaces within the veterinary industry, or I guess with outside of the veterinary industry as well?
I mean, I guess my biggest pieces of advice are, look for problems that aren't being solved or aren't being solved well, right? And there's a lot of them, challenges. How can you, I mean, my whole thing is, how can I make people's lives better, right? And so if you think of it from that perspective, or think about what are problems for you, problems you've experienced, because again, both of my solutions were for problems I personally experienced. And then start to think of, like, how can this problem be solved, and let yourself go crazy, right? Like, let your mind be creative and broad, and don't, it's very easy to start to make reasons why this won't work. So if we
Right.
use it as an example, I could be like, I don't know anything about fashion. I don't know anyone in the fashion industry. I don't have the first idea how to get clothes manufactured. I don't know anything about this, right?
Right.
And that was all very, very true. And but don't let those reasons stop you from imagining and building, because then what can happen is, get it down on paper or on your computer, and then you can slowly start to build. And networking is the number one thing. Again, a
Yes.
personality trait of mine, which has served me well, is that I'm not afraid to talk to anyone. And I'm not afraid to look stupid, right? Or feel green or new at something.
Right.
Um, and that has helped open the door for me. And I've had a lot of people, say no, or not answer my calls or my emails or whatever. But if you're persistent, a lot of people will. It is amazing how many people will reach out to help you. I did none of these things on my own, none of them. There were always people that helped me in small ways and in big ways. And so none of these achievements has been, done alone.
Absolutely. There's nothing in veterinary medicine that can truly be done alone, I feel like. But we find that there is so much burnout in veterinary medicine. Even though none of us are doing it alone, there's burnout throughout every space in the veterinary hospital. Do you have thoughts on how clinics and veterinary team members and relief platforms can potentially support a better work-life balance?
Yeah, I mean, well, if we talk about it in terms of relief, I feel like sometimes being a relief vet can help because you can have control over your schedule. You can have control over the practices where you work. You can, there's this magical thing that happens. I've worked at many, many practices that I love working relief there. I love
Right?
the teams. They're amazing, but wouldn't want to work there as an associate. And
Sure.
I can tell that, right? Um, so you can, as a relief vet, you can float above some of the politics that are going on whenever you put a group of people together.
Right.
It just happens, or just human
Mhm.
beings, those kinds of things will happen. But you get to sort of float above it all, and that is very nice and and relaxing. Um, but on the flip side of that, I think when practices buy into this idea that relief vets are incredibly important members of your team, you
Mhm.
don't just think of them as some warm body that, comes in like, oh, when you just absolutely have to have one,
Yeah.
that kind of like, oh, I don't want the relief vet to come, but if I have to, that kind of attitude about relief vets isn't helpful to your team.
Right.
What's helpful to your team is to allow your team member to take a guilt-free vacation. And
Mhm.
I'm sure, many of you listening and you, Amanda, can appreciate this. I worked at a multi-doctor practice that wasn't in a habit of using relief vets. And what would happen is when one person would take a vacation, everyone else just had more work to do.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
I would feel guilty about taking that vacation, even though I knew I needed it, because I knew what it would do to my colleagues. And then
Right.
I also understood that when someone else took a vacation, I was going to feel that extra pressure and that extra step or stress. So you're not helping your team by
Mhm.
shuffling your associates. Bring a relief vet in to help them. So that does multiple things. One, it keeps the rest of your team sane, and it helps your clients be seen so quicker, and they stay satisfied because you're not down a doctor. And I really feel like that is important for helping to prevent burnout as it relates to relief.
So, so true. And the relief veterinarian gets something out of it as well. Like you said, we're staying in the work, we're getting our patient fix in, and we're also having the opportunity to build business for the hospitals that we're working at. When we provide patients with compassionate care, that only helps the veterinary hospital. So it's an investment back in the hospital to have a high quality relief veterinarian in that space.
Yeah, and we talk about high quality relief vets. Interview your relief vets.
Hmm.
We're not Uber drivers. We're like, you know, we're individual human beings. I mean, so are Uber drivers, but we aren't about getting a practice from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? We are interacting with your team. We are interacting with your clients. Please interview us. I can count on one hand the number of times I have been asked to be interviewed. Most people are like, "Are you available this date?" They don't know me, you
Right.
know? And I would encourage relief vets to interview your practices. Make sure it's a place you want to work. And it never fails to astonish me how much that step gets skipped.
I have been asked to interview less than 5 times probably, but I've been doing relief for a long period of time. I also know, as a relief veterinarian, the space has changed a lot, including the addition of technology as being something that veterinary medicine as a whole is experiencing. But how is that potentially impacting the practices and the relief professionals that are filling in those really important opportunities for people to take those vacations?
I think technology is helping people connect, right?
Mhm.
So, like
Right.
on Relief Rover, and there are other tech companies out there that are doing the same thing, helping people connect and helping people meet each other. And then there's the tools of running your own relief business. So technology is involved in that. And then I think if we go back to the well-being piece, there's some really interesting technology out there that's helping with culture and retention. So not just in the relief space, but also in, retaining your employees. And, more and more, like the employees are younger. We're dealing with younger generations that are digital natives. They expect to be doing things on their phone, and they expect to be not just engaging with work using technology, but engaging in their social lives using technology, right? I mean,
Mhm.
all of us are doing that,
Right.
but so, again, I work for Hound, so we'll talk about Rally, but Rally is one of those tools that it can help with retention and culture. And it's basically an app that teams can have on their phone. So hospitals will subscribe to Rally. The teams can have the app on their phone, and it's really fun. It's gamified to dispense these surveys that look at factors of work satisfaction and also work dissatisfaction. And it kind of measures like how your team is feeling. It takes a temperature. And also they can do, and then management can look at that data in aggregate and say, oh, you know what, our team might be struggling a little this month. Let's see where we can step in. And then the team gets to reward each other, right? So recognition and reward really matters. So they can boop each other. So like, boop a dog's nose. And that boop is then public to the whole team. And we had a great case study where a big specialty and emergency center uses Rally, and the surgeon booped the anesthesia tech
Uh-huh.
for job well done, right? And so that probably happens, hopefully, fairly frequently. So the surgeon's in there, the tech does a great job. Maybe there was a little, a drop in blood pressure and the tech was right on it, or whatever the case may have been. And the surgeon would say, hey, great job. Thank you so much for doing that. That accolade stays right there in that room. Maybe there
Right.
were a few other people to hear it. But when you boop on technology and everyone sees who's getting booped and everyone sees what the boop is for, that sense of like pride, like, oh my gosh, the surgeon just booped me, right? And everyone got to see that I did a good job. That really lifts people's spirits. That lifts the surgeon spirit, right? That lifts
Right.
the team spirit. It creates this, oh, I would love to get a public accolade like that. So it's a really, I'm just giving you a few of the features, but that it's a cool technology that that truly can do what it's intended to do, which is to lift people up and kind of take that, bring some positivity and good culture into the clinic when people are using this tool well.
That's so great. And I love that it's called booping because my whole life can revolve around booping as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Um, in addition to booping, what does excite you the most moving forward? I mean, you've had such an amazing career so far, and obviously many, many, many more years to come. But what's exciting you right now about the future of veterinary care and the role that relief professionals can play in that?
I feel like we are at such a cool time to be veterinarians. There's so much change going on. Yes, we have some challenges to solve, but there's all these creative people that have come forward and are trying to solve them. And there are there will continue to be challenges. So we need more creative people to come forward. And what I would say is exciting is if you have a problem-solving mindset, um, it's a really fun time to be in. And and this profession is worth it. You know, what we do as a larger mission to help pets and support the human animal bond is incredibly profound. And I think it can be when we get kind of caught up in our day-to-day and the stressors in our day-to-day, it can be easy sometimes to lose sight of what a privilege it is to do what we do. Not everyone has a job like this. In fact, very few people have a job like we have.
Right.
And so I think trying to pull ourselves back to that can be really helpful. And I also think, you know, there's a shift in how practice is happening. And I do think there's going to be more relief. I don't think relief is going away. I don't think this was a COVID thing, right?
Sure.
Where I think there's going to be more people doing relief. And I think relief workers are helping to drive some of the change in practice for associates as well, whether that's, you know, flexible work schedules or, you know, having a little broader perspective on spectrum of care or many things. I think relief veterinarians are helping to kind of drive some of this positive change in how we work in our profession.
Is there anything specific that you want to make sure that our listeners, especially the relief professionals, that you really want them to take away from our conversation today?
I would say, I mean, I'm obviously a big believer in relief practice, but I don't think relief is for everyone, right?
Sure.
I think we need a healthy balance of practice owners and associates and relief vets. But I will say relief can serve a great as a great tool in your career span, whether that be for a period of burnout, whether that be for when you're in childcare years or elder care years, or whether you are ready for some kind of adventure, or if you're trying out a new form of practice. Maybe you've been doing general practice, you know, the whole time and you've always been a little afraid of ER, but you want to dip your toe in it. Relief
Right.
is a great way to do that. Maybe you're building a practice. Maybe you want to be a practice owner. Relief is a great way to get yourself prepared for practice ownership because you can go to lots of different practices and see what's great about, you know, about some, see where the, you know, bottlenecks happen over and over and see some elegant solutions. So relief can serve you for your entire career, like it did me, or it can serve you for part of your career.
Uh-huh.
So I would just say, you know, considering relief work is a great way to go. And also, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, think about how you can solve problems. And no matter what you're doing in this career, network, network, network. Meet your colleagues. It makes a big difference, and you never know what surprises are around the corner.
Absolutely. If we didn't network, you and I would have never had the opportunity to meet.
That's right. Exactly. Thanks, Vet Partners.
Thanks, Vet Partners. Anybody that wants information on Vet Partners can certainly reach out to either Dr. Trice or myself. We're happy to fill in any questions you may have. But if someone does have additional questions about Kick It Pajamas, about your work with Hound and Relief Rover, or even about entrepreneurship, is there a way that you prefer to be contacted?
Yeah, so if you're interested in Hound and our solutions, you can go to hound.vet. If you're interested in Kick It Pajamas, you can go to kickitpajamas.com. And then I am an open book. I'm happy to talk to anyone. So please, nobody hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions about anything. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up or refer you to someone who knows, or, but you can reach me at cindy@hound.vet.
Excellent. And can people follow you on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. I have no idea, I guess Cindy Trice. And then, you could find Hound and Relief Rover and Kick It on all the social media channels.
That's amazing. Well, we will wrap up today. I know I've kept you chatting, and I am so grateful for your time. This has been just such an amazing conversation, and I absolutely am so grateful not only for the work that you're doing, but also, again, your time today, your entrepreneurship, and your energy that you're putting, all this good energy out into the world.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, again, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about the state of veterinary relief. I also want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, kindly share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, please don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews will help other doctors, including relief veterinarians, practice owners, and veterinary professionals find us. So until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. I want to wish you all an amazing week ahead. And again, thank you, Dr. Trice.
Thank you.